At 11:10 a.m., they walked into Columbine High School. At 11:17 a.m., 2 bombs were supposed to explode, turning the school into a war zone. But when the bombs failed, they picked up their guns instead. What happened next would change America forever.
So we have shots being fired. Okay. The guy is in a black trench coat. Jerry, there's not guns. They just shot somebody inside the cafeteria. I'm going to have to try and get out of here and call you back.
Got help on the way, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, God. Stay in the line with me.
Oh, God. Kids, just stay down. Under the table, kids. Heads under the table.
April 20th, 1999. A day that began like any other. Students chatted in the hallways, teachers prepared lessons, and parents expected their kids to return home that evening. But by noon, Columbine High School would be a war zone. 2 students, 2 guns, 13 innocent lives lost, and a nation that would never be the same. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were not the outcasts the media portrayed them to be. They had friends, attended school events, and even recorded home videos with their classmates. But behind the cameras, they were preparing for something far darker. Eric's writings revealed a deep hatred for society. He saw himself as superior, cold, calculating, and obsessed with violence. Dylan, on the other hand, expressed loneliness and suicidal thoughts. But together, they became a deadly force. For over a year, Eric and Dylan meticulously planned their attack. They built homemade bombs, practiced shooting in the woods, and even wrote a hit list of students they hated. The plan was simple. First, plant 2 propane bombs in the cafeteria, set to explode at lunch, killing hundreds. Then, wait outside and pick off the survivors as they ran. If their bombs had detonated, this wouldn't have been a school shooting. It would have been one of the worst terrorist attacks in American history. 11:10 a.m. Eric and Dylan arrive at Columbine dressed in trench coats. They place 2 duffel bags in the cafeteria, each containing a 20-pound propane bomb set to explode at 11:17 a.m. Their plan has failed. Now they move to Plan B, mass execution. 11:19 a.m. The first shots ring out. Students start running for cover. Then the horror begins. At 11:29 a.m., Eric and Dylan enter the library, and what followed was 7 minutes of unimaginable horror.
Yeah, this is here at Columbine High School. We have shots being fired. Okay. The guy is in a black trench coat. Jerry, there's not guns. They just shot somebody inside the cafeteria. I'm going to have to try and get out of here and call you back.
Got help on the way, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, God.
Stay in the line with me.
Oh, God. Kids, just stay down. Under the table, kids. Heads under the table.
10 students were gunned down. Others begged for their lives, but the killers only laughed.
Columbine survivor here. I don't know who needs to hear this, but trauma is not a competition. Starting just like days and weeks after the shooting at Columbine High School, I was already comparing my experience to others and telling myself that I had no reason to be as impacted as I was because there were so many other people who had it worse. But that's just not how trauma works. It took me 10 years to really own the title of survivor, and I wish somebody would have told me that sooner. Everybody's experiences are different and they're your own, and it's just not about who suffered more or who struggled more. It's not a competition.
By 11:35 a.m., they left the library. Their killing spree was almost over. 12:08 p.m. Nearly an hour after the attack began, Eric and Dylan returned to the library and take their own lives. In total, 13 innocent lives were lost. 24 others were injured, and thousands were left scarred forever.
2 days away from my 18th birthday, I barricaded in a small office with 59 other students for 3 hours when 2 seniors killed 12 of my classmates and my typing teacher before killing themselves. I escaped physically uninjured, but that only increased my feelings of guilt. Guilt for not only surviving, but also for struggling as much as I did. I told myself all kinds of excuses to minimize my trauma. I didn't lose a loved one. I hadn't been shot. I wasn't in the library where most of the murders took place. Even in the initial horror-filled days following the shooting, I couldn't accept that my story was that bad. Later, when Mr. Frank DeAngelis, the principal, invited the class of '99 back to the school to honor the year mark, that I finally felt normal again. I reconnected with my Columbine Rebel family, and I discovered what it was like to not be alone in my struggles. That year, I re-enrolled in college and eventually earned my bachelor's in English, in addition to receiving my teaching license. Now, I'm executive director of the Rebels Project, and in my 10th year of teaching high school in Aurora. Take a guess, I teach seniors. They know my story, though I started out telling them my history purely because I wanted to make sure they took the drills seriously. However, in me being vulnerable and open with them, I opened the lines of communication and became the trusted adult for many of them. I still have rough days and rough year marks. April is notoriously complicated for me, even years later. But I've learned to give myself grace, and that therapy really does help. I want others to know that it does get better. I promise. I am a survivor, and you are too. Sending so much love.
You can feel the panic through the TV screen each time you see these teens running from the shooting scene at Littleton, Colorado's high school. The two suspects who fired the shots were members of the Trenchcoat Mafia. Could this group of seemingly clean-cut boys be considered a gang? Lisa Taylor Austin is a gang expert who counseled young LA gang members for almost 6 years. She has her own theory about the trenchcoat suspects.
They committed the shooting on Hitler's birthday. They have neo-Nazi beliefs. There seems to be a lot of fantasy role game playing that went on prior to this. The amount of ammunition, the guns, the bombs that they had seemed to fit in with the white supremacist cult.
The media needed an explanation, and they got it wrong. Eric and Dylan weren't bullied loners, they weren't targeting jocks, and they weren't part of any trenchcoat mafia. Columbine changed everything. Schools implemented zero-tolerance policies, active shooter drills, and security cameras. But did it actually prevent future shootings? Columbine wasn't just a tragedy, it became a blueprint. Mass shooters studied Eric and Dylan, trying to outdo them. Gun control debates intensified. Some argued for stricter laws, others blamed violent video games and mental illness, but decades later, the shootings continue. In the chaos of Columbine, many lives were forever changed. Those who survived carry the weight of that day, and the voices of those who didn't.
I was on my way with my sister to school. She was getting on to me about making us late. So we got into a little bit of an argument and turned into a fight and started to call her names and pull up to the school. And I got out of the car and I slammed the car door shut on her. I had no idea that that would be the last time that I would see her.
Heard on the radio that something was going on at Columbine High School.
During my lunch period, I went to the school library to study for a test. I heard these popping noises coming from outside the school. They started to get louder. And then this teacher ran into the room. She was completely frantic. She ran over to the phone to call the police, and while she was on the phone, she kept yelling at all of us to hide and get underneath the tables. As we're hearing the popping noises, I started to realize that this was serious and just feeling this dread feeling. My two friends, as we realized that these were gunshots we were hearing, as the popping noises were getting louder, as the shooters came into the school and they're getting closer and closer to the library, just started to freak out. The library was the first room that the two shooters came into. They went around the room, they came over to where Corey was sitting. Corey was a junior. He wanted to be a Marine. And the first thing that Corey did was he put a girl behind him. And as they came over, he was the only person that day to physically jump out and try to stop. And he actually might have been successful, except there were two of them. And then they turned their guns to my friend Matt and left me underneath that table. And I thought I was gonna die. My ears ringing so loud from the shotgun blast, I thought they were bleeding. So I was the first student in the library to stand up and looked around. I saw the shooters were gone. I wasn't sure if they had left or not, but they had left. I yelled at everyone still in the room, "Let's get out of here. I think they're gone." I heard a girl asking for help. Turn around, there's a girl rocking back and forth, asking for help over and over. And helped to pick her up, and we ran out of an emergency exit. There's a police car, thankfully, outside. And we all run behind the police car. And as soon as we got behind that car, the two shooters were back in the library. So we escaped just in time.
All these people that I was praying for 30 minutes later, their brothers and sisters were, their brothers and sisters were showing up.
But not your sister.
A victim of the Littleton tragedy was laid to rest today. Rachel Scott was one of the first to die outside the school. She was Columbine High's golden girl.
I think the biggest challenge for me after the shooting was the anger that I was dealing with towards the two shooters. I hated those guys. I used to fantasize what it'd be like to get revenge on them, and they were dead and gone. And that anger that I was holding on to started to affect the people that were close to me, my family. And I started to take out that anger on them. I took it out a lot on my little brother, on my mom. I was kind of mean to my sister that last year for life because she was reaching out to kids that weren't very cool at school. And that's really all I cared about, was trying to be popular.
I definitely felt broken after the shooting.
When we were moving some furniture around on a Christmas day, and we moved this dresser and saw this tracing of her hands. She traced her hands like this on the back of an old dresser and wrote, "These hands belong to Rachel Joy Scott and will someday touch millions of people's hearts."
We started to go through Rachel's possessions. We knew that she had a number of journals and she liked writing, and we started to see there was this theme that she had.
Just a month before she died, she was in her class. The teacher gives us an assignment, and it was, write a paper if you were your best self, what that would look like. She titles it, "My Ethics, My Codes of Life." In it, she says, "I have this theory.
I have this theory that if one person can go out of their way to show compassion, then it will start a chain reaction of the same. People will never know how far a little kindness can go."
I began to hear the stories of her and read her writings, and she began to really become a role model to me after she had passed. I didn't know some of the things that she was thinking and feeling.
The shooters wanted to make a negative impact on this world, so my decision was that I want to leave a bigger impact, but in a positive way.
Each and every one of us in this room has a great capacity to do great things. If one person will go out of their way to show compassion, then it will start a chain reaction of the same. And people will never know how far a little bit of kindness can go. You just may start a chain reaction.
For every victim lost, there were countless others left with wounds, both physical and emotional, that may never heal. In 1999, no one thought a school shooting of this magnitude was possible. Today, it's a terrifying reality.
This afternoon, I spoke with Governor Malloy and FBI Director Mueller. I offered Governor Malloy my condolences on behalf of the nation and made it clear he will have every single resource that he needs to investigate this heinous crime, care for the victims, counsel their families. We've endured too many of these tragedies in the past few years, and each time I learn the news, I react not as a president, but as anybody else would, as a parent. And that was especially true today. I know there's not a parent in America who doesn't feel the same overwhelming grief that I do. The majority of those who died today were children. Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. They had their entire lives ahead of them. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, kids of their own. Among the fallen were also teachers, men and women who devoted their lives to helping our children fulfill their dreams. So our hearts are broken today. For the parents and grandparents, sisters and brothers of these little children, and for the families of the adults who were lost. Our hearts are broken for the parents of the survivors as well. For as blessed as they are to have their children home tonight, they know that their children's innocence has been torn away from them too early, and there are no words that will ease their pain. As a country, we have been through this too many times. Whether it's an elementary school in Newton, or a shopping mall in Oregon, or a temple in Wisconsin, or a movie theater in Aurora, or a street corner in Chicago, these neighborhoods are our neighborhoods, and these children are our children. And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics. This evening, Michelle and I will do what I know every parent in America will do, which is hug our children a little tighter, and we'll tell them that we love them, and we'll remind each other how deeply we love one another. But there are families in Connecticut who cannot do that tonight, and they need all of us right now. In the hard days to come, that community needs us to be at our best as Americans, and I will do everything in my power as president to help. Because while nothing can fill the space of a lost child or loved one, all of us can extend a hand to those in need, to remind them that we are there for them, that we are praying for them, that the love they felt for those they lost endures not just in their memories, but also in ours. May God bless the memory of the victims, and in the words of Scripture, heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds.
But have we? 25 years later, we're still asking the same questions. How do we stop this? How do we make sure no more families endure this pain? April 20th, 1999. 13 lives stolen, 24 others injured, thousands left traumatized. Columbine changed America forever, and their names should never be forgotten. Cassie Bernal, Stephen Curnow, Corey DePuter, Kelly Fleming, Matthew Kechter, Daniel Mauser, Daniel Rorbo, Dave Sanders, Rachel Scott, Isaiah Schulz, John Tomlin, Lauren Townsend, Kyle Velasquez. If this story moved you, share it, discuss it, learn from it, and most importantly, never forget the victims.